People are dying who don't need to. Our founder, Barry Dixon, has spent his whole career treating people with traumatic brain injury and acquired brain injury in the ICU. Despite all the advances in medical care during that time, he's still shocked and confronted by the survival statistics for people that suffer a traumatic brain injury or TBI. A 50% mortality rate, and of those that do survive, 67% have long-term serious disabilities. If Barry were here, he would tell you that a primary cause of poor outcomes for brain injury patients is the failure of our usual monitoring systems to detect brain hypoxia early enough to allow effective interventions and prevent permanent injury and death. He would also tell you that is why 15 years ago he set out on a quest to find a solution, and that is how our story at Cyban began. Would you decide to drill a hole in your patient's head and insert that probe to measure brain oxygen if you knew there was a better way? Would you decide to drill a hole and insert that probe if you knew you could get equally accurate information about intracranial pressure, brain oxygen levels, faster, without risk to your patient, and at a lower cost? The answer is simple, of course you wouldn't. Sorry. Until now, clinicians treating unconscious and sedated patients with severe brain injury have not had that choice. They've had two bad choices: an inadequate hourly physical exam or an invasive, risky, and expensive brain probe. When treating TBI, the clinician's goal is to prevent brain hypoxia. That is, brain cells die within 2 minutes if starved of oxygen. If brain hypoxia is identified early enough, there are many interventions that clinicians can make to prevent further injury. However, in most cases, clinicians are flying blind. The standard of care for monitoring unconscious and sedated TBI patients is an hourly physical exam by a nurse or a clinician. A physical exam is subjective. It doesn't measure intracranial pressure or brain oxygen. It's not continuous, and as a result, brain hypoxia is often detected after damage has already occurred. In the very worst cases, a clinician may refer a patient for monitoring by invasive probe. Invasive probes require surgery. It can take hours before monitoring actually begins, and there's a 10% risk to the patient of further brain injury and a 3% chance of infection, not to mention the cost of the equipment and the surgery to implant the probe. As a result, less than 20% of severe TBI patients receive invasive monitoring, and most at-risk patients receive no objective brain monitoring at all. Clinicians want brain monitoring that allows them to minimise the likelihood of misjudging a brain injury and to minimise the time to determine whether their treatment decisions are effective, and in doing so, to do the least harm to their patients. We know that when treatment for brain hypoxia is guided by objective monitoring, that patient outcomes improve and hospital costs are reduced. So let me introduce you to Cyban's Brain Pulse Monitor. Clinicians now have a solution to eradicate what we call the information void, a solution that identifies complications as they happen to make faster, more relevant treatment decisions, to improve patient outcomes and reduce the cost of care. Cyban's Brain Pulse Monitor provides easy-to-use, non-invasive measures of intracranial pressure, brain oxygen and cerebral perfusion that are continuous and accurate relative to the existing invasive gold standard. So now you know that Cyban's Brain Pulse Monitor is good for patients. It assists clinicians' decision-making and will reduce hospital costs. But what does that mean for our investors? Well, we will launch the brain pulse monitor in the US market in Q1 2024 with a CapEx consumable model where each bedside monitor will sell for $10,000 and each single-use sensor set will sell for $350 on a per-patient basis. By year 5, we forecast installing more than 3,000 bedside units that will provide sales of more than $50 million in the US market alone. Comparing to listed comps, we would expect that that would create a company valued in excess of $600 million. But that is only the beginning. The application of our technology provides multiple opportunities for growth over time. Our first generation product is applicable more broadly than monitoring TBI patients in the ICU. We already know our technology is applicable for acquired brain injuries such as stroke detection. We're currently trialling the brain pulse monitor in high-risk cardiovascular surgery and emergency departments. Our second generation product will target brain monitoring for first responders, neonates, and military applications. And our third generation product will target other large organs where we have already collected data that shows we can measure oxygen levels non-invasively in the lungs, the liver, and intestines. So what's our current status? We've published a landmark study showing our brain pulse monitor correlates with invasive intracranial pressure monitoring. We have completed our pivotal study for FDA clearance and have met the primary endpoint expected by the FDA. We'll publish the results of a further landmark study later this year showing our brain pulse monitor correlates with invasive oxygen probes. Our product will be equally accurate as the invasive gold standard. It will enable earlier interventions with lower patient risk, and as you can see here, all at a lower cost to current invasive monitoring. We will have FDA clearance in calendar year 2023, and we have a clear pathway to payment as an ancillary service in the hospital setting covered under existing DRG payments for ICU and surgery procedures. We currently have boots on the ground in the US with a commercial team and advisors who have direct experience in selling into the ICU market, and we're working with clinical champions within our first 4 partner hospital networks. Over the coming 12 months, we are focused on delivering a portfolio of evidence generated by our US KOLs that will support our clinical champions in their quest to change behaviour at the bedside and secure budget allocation for the implementation of the brain pulse monitor at scale. We have built a competitive moat via 2 patent families that protect our proprietary sensor design. That design solves the key technical challenge of signal contamination from blood flow in the skin and enables us to 1, display a unique brain pulse, 2, continuously report bilateral ICP and oxygen sats, 3, deliver one device that reports multiple parameters, and 4, provides clinicians confidence that the brain pulse monitor output correlates with the invasive gold standard. I'd like to invite you to invest in Cyban as we build the next Medtech unicorn based on Australian innovation and invention. Thank you.